Kelechi stood in the courtyard of the king's storehouse, his heart beating like a drum in his chest. Around him, other workers whispered and smiled, their eyes bright with hope. Today was promotion day, the day when faithful workers would be called forward and honored. The head steward unrolled a scroll, his voice echoing across the stone walls. One by one, names were called. Each man stepped forward, bowing low as the crowd clapped. Kelechi waited, his hands folded calmly at his sides. But his name never came. The scroll was rolled up. The ceremony was ending. Kelechi felt the stares of others on his back, heavy as stones. His rival, Bamadil, stood near the front, his lips curved in a smile that did not reach his eyes. The elders would not look at Kelechi. They turned away quickly, their faces closed like doors. As the crowd began to leave, the head steward moved close to Kelechi. His voice was low, almost a hiss. "Your name was removed," he whispered. "By command." Kelechi's blood went cold. Who had commanded it? And why? That evening, Kelechi's friends came to his home. They sat in the dim light of an oil lamp, their voices careful and low. "Brother," one of them said, "you know how things work in the storehouse. You must bring gifts to the elders. Show your gratitude." Another nodded. "It is the way. A chicken here, a jar of palm wine there. It shows respect." Kelechi shook his head slowly. "I have worked hard. My hands are clean. My records are perfect. Why must I pay to be seen?" His friends exchanged glances. One sighed. "Because everyone else does. If you do not, you are invisible." Kelechi remained silent, his jaw set. He would not buy his way forward. His work should speak for him. Later that night, as Kelechi lay awake, he heard footsteps outside. Through a crack in the wall, he saw Bamadil walking past, carrying heavy parcels wrapped in cloth. The parcels clinked softly, like coins. Bamadil was heading toward the elders' quarters. Kelechi closed his eyes, his stomach tight with unease. The next morning, Bamadil found Kelechi near the storage sheds. He walked up with a smile, his teeth white in the sunlight. "Ah, Kelechi," Bamadil said, shaking his head as if pitying a child. "Still standing alone, I see. Still too proud to bend." Kelechi looked at him steadily. "I am not proud. I am honest." Bamadil laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Honest? Brother, clean hands do not feed a family. Clean hands do not lift a man's name. You think the elders care about your perfect numbers? They care about who remembers them." Kelechi said nothing. Bamadil leaned closer, his voice dropping. "You will remain small forever if you keep this foolishness. But me? I know how to rise." He turned and walked away, his shoulders loose with confidence. That night, Kelechi could not sleep. He kept thinking about Bamadil's words, about the parcels, about the missing name. Then, through his window, he saw something strange. Bamadil was walking into the forest, following a narrow path that disappeared into darkness. It was a path no honest man used. Deep in the oil palm forest, where the moonlight could not reach, Bamadil stood before a small shrine. It was made of clay and bone, decorated with feathers and dark stains. A priest stepped out from the shadows, his eyes gleaming like a cat's. His voice was smooth, like oil poured on water. "You have come again," the priest said. "What do you seek this time?" Bamadil swallowed hard. "I want a favor that cannot be broken. I want my name lifted high, higher than all others. I want the elders to choose me, no matter what." The priest smiled, showing teeth too sharp. "Such things are possible. But they require payment." Bamadil pulled out a pouch of coins and a fine goat tethered nearby. "I have brought what you asked." The priest waved his hand dismissively. "Coins? Goats? These are nothing. For what you ask, I need something more precious. Bamadiel's confidence faltered. What do you want? The priest's eyes narrowed. A name. Not the name of a goat. The name of a man. Give me the name of your rival, and I will seal it away. His path will close. Yours will open. Bamadiel hesitated only a moment. Then he whispered, Kelechi. In the king's storehouse, old guards told stories during the long, quiet nights. They spoke of treasures hidden in the deep rooms, of ancient weapons and forgotten gold. But the story they told most often was about the ledger of truth. It is no ordinary book, one guard said, his voice low and serious. It was blessed by the first king's priest. It records what men hide. It sees what they do in darkness. Another guard nodded. I have heard that it writes by itself. When a lie is spoken in the storehouse, the ledger knows. When a theft happens, the ledger records it. The younger guards laughed nervously. Old tales, one said. Who believes such things? But the old guard did not smile. Believe or not, the ledger is real. I have seen it. It sits in the deep room, locked behind iron. That very night, in the deep room where no one was watching, the ledger of truth lay on its stone shelf. The air was still, thick with dust. Then, without warning, the pages began to flutter. There was no wind. No hand touched them. Yet the pages turned, one after another, as if searching for something. Or someone. At dawn, chaos erupted in the king's storehouse. A guard ran through the courtyard, shouting. The seals! The royal seals are missing. And coins, gold coins from the tribute room. Workers gathered quickly, their faces tight with fear. Theft from the king's storehouse was no small matter. It was treason. The head steward's face was dark with anger. Search everything. Question everyone. Find the thief before the king hears of this. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. People looked at each other with suspicion. Who would dare such a thing? By midday, the whispers had a name. Kelechi, someone muttered. He was angry about the promotion. He has been cold to the elders. Yes, another agreed. He refused to give gifts. He thinks he is better than us. Perhaps he decided to take what he thought he deserved. Bamadiel stood among the crowd, his face carefully concerned. It pains me to say it, he said loudly, but Kelechi has been acting strange. Bitter. Stubborn. The whispers grew louder. Kelechi's name was spoken again and again, like a curse. Before the sun set, the king's men arrived at Kelechi's door. They kicked it open, their faces hard as stone. The trial was held beneath the great Irako tree, where all judgments were made. The elders sat in a half-circle, their faces grave. The head steward stood at the center, holding the missing seals. These were found near your home, Kelechi, the head steward said, his voice cold. Hidden in a basket of yams. Kelechi's eyes widened. I did not put them there. Someone is lying. One of the elders leaned forward. You have been difficult, Kelechi. You refused to show proper gratitude. You acted as if you were above the rest of us. Another elder nodded. Perhaps you thought you could take what you wanted, since we did not give it freely. Kelechi looked around the circle. His hands trembled, but his voice stayed steady. I have stolen nothing. I have lied to no one. My work has always been true. Then one of his fellow workers, a man named Obina, stood up. Kelechi had once helped him fix a mistake in the records. I saw Kelechi near the tribute room 2 nights ago, Obina said quietly, avoiding Kelechi's eyes. He was acting suspicious. It was a lie. Kelechi stared at him, betrayed. The head steward raised his hand. The punishment will be announced when the king arrives. But the king did not come quickly. And the elders were impatient. They dragged Kelechi into the courtyard. Workers and villagers gathered to watch, their faces hungry for drama. Kelechi's wife stood at the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. His young son hid behind her wrapper, too frightened to look. The head steward tore the work beads from Kelechi's neck, the beads that marked him as a trusted worker. They clattered to the ground like broken promises. "Let this be known," the head steward shouted. "Kelechi is no longer one of us. His name is dirt. His honor is dust." People spat on the ground near Kelechi's feet. Some turned away in disgust. Others shook their heads, pretending sorrow but enjoying the fall of a man who had refused to bend. Kelechi stood still, his head high even as shame was piled upon him like stones. Then Bamadil stepped forward, his face carefully humble. "If you need someone to take Kelechi's duties," Bamadil said, "I am willing. I will serve faithfully." The elders nodded, pleased. "Good. You will begin tomorrow." The drums sounded the next evening, announcing Bamadil's promotion. The whole storehouse gathered to hear it. Bamadil stood at the center, his chest swelling with pride. "I will serve with all my heart," he said, bowing low. "I will honor the king and the elders. I will not fail you." The crowd clapped. The elders smiled. Bamadil's eyes swept over them all, but they lingered on Kelechi, who stood at the very edge of the courtyard, broken and silent. Bamadil's smile widened. This was victory. That night, Bamadil returned to his home, his heart light. He lay down on his mat, ready to sleep the sleep of a man who had won. But then he heard it. Scratch. 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 It sounded like a pen moving across paper. Like something writing. It came from inside the wall, slow and deliberate. Bamadil sat up, his skin prickling. He pressed his ear to the wall. Scratch. 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 He heard his own name, whispered by no voice he could identify. Bamadil did not sleep that night. Kelechi's life became a slow, bitter struggle. Without his position, he had no steady income. His wife sold her wrappers to buy food. His son went to bed hungry more nights than not. Friends who once greeted him now crossed the street to avoid him. Doors that were open before were now closed. One evening, Kelechi sat outside his home, staring at the dust. His wife came and sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "We will survive," she said softly. "You did nothing wrong. The truth will come." Kelechi nodded, though he did not know if he believed her. He could have stolen. He could have cursed the elders, cursed Bamadil, cursed the gods. But he did none of these things. He simply endured. Then, one night, a stranger appeared at his door. The man wore a dark cloak, his face hidden. "I have heard of your trouble," the stranger said. "I can offer you coins. Enough to feed your family for many months." Kelechi's heart leapt. "What must I do?" The stranger's smile was cold. "One small job. Deliver a package. Ask no questions. It is easy." Kelechi felt the weight of hunger, of shame, of desperation pressing on him. But something in the stranger's voice was wrong. Kelechi looked at the stranger for a long moment. His stomach ached with hunger. His son's thin face filled his mind. But he shook his head. "No," Kelechi said. "I will not do work I do not understand. I will not touch what might be dirty." The stranger stared at him, then laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Then you will remain small forever," the stranger said. "You will watch your family suffer while others climb. You are a fool, Kelechi." The stranger turned to leave. But as he walked away, Kelechi noticed something strange. The stranger's shadow did not match his body. It moved wrong, too fast, twisting like smoke. It looked like the shadow of something else entirely, something with too many limbs. Kelechi's blood went cold. He stepped back into his home and bolted the door. His wife looked at him, worried. What did he want? Kelechi swallowed hard. Something I could not give. He did not tell her about the shadow. Some things were too dark to speak aloud. That night, Kelechi prayed to his ancestors. He asked for strength. He asked for patience. He asked for truth to rise. Kelechi began walking to the river each morning, searching for any work he could find. One day, he saw an old woman sitting beneath a palm tree, selling wine from clay pots. Her name was Mama Neka. Everyone knew her, but few knew her story. Some said she had been a priestess. Others said she was simply wise. She looked up as Kelechi approached, her eyes sharp and knowing. "Sit, child," she said, though Kelechi was no child. "You carry a heavy load." Kelechi hesitated, then sat. Slowly, he told her everything, the stolen promotion, the false accusation, the trial, the shame. Mama Neka listened without speaking, her fingers tracing patterns in the dust. When he finished, she nodded. "Your trouble is not only men," she said quietly. "It is also spirits. Someone has spoken your name in a dark place." Kelechi's heart clenched. "What can I do?" Mama Neka studied him. "Do you want revenge? Or do you want truth?" "Truth," Kelechi said without hesitation. Mama Neka smiled. "Good. But truth is slow. It does not hurry." Then she said something that made Kelechi's skin prickle. "You are called Kelechi here. But your mother named you something else first, did she not? A name only the ancestors remember." Kelechi stared at her. "How do you know that?" She did not answer. Mama Neka led Kelechi to the riverbank. She handed him a bowl of sand and water. "Wash your hands," she said. "And swear to me this, you will refuse both bribe and revenge. You will not pay evil with evil." Kelechi dipped his hands into the bowl, scrubbing the sand against his palms. "I swear it. Even if you starve? Even then? Even if your enemy rises higher? Even then?" Mama Neka watched him closely. Then she poured the water from the bowl into the river. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the river began to bubble. Not violently, just softly, like something breathing beneath the surface. The water swirled, forming shapes, letters. Kelechi leaned closer, his heart pounding. The water spelled a single word, wait. Mama Neka smiled. "The river has heard you. The spirits have seen your clean hands. Now you must be patient. Truth will come, but not today. Not tomorrow. But it will come." Kelechi stared at the water, his chest tight with hope and fear. "How long must I wait?" Mama Neka shrugged. "As long as it takes." Days passed. Kelechi continued to struggle, but something had changed inside him. He felt steadier, more certain. Then Mama Neka came to him again, holding a small pouch. "I can give you this," she said, opening the pouch. Inside was a black powder that smelled of smoke and bitterness. "If you sprinkle this at Bamadiel's door, his lies will be revealed within 3 days. Everyone will know what he did." Kelechi stared at the powder. It was exactly what he wanted. Quick justice. Immediate revenge. His hand reached toward the pouch. Then he stopped. "No," Kelechi said, pulling his hand back. "I swore I would not pay evil with evil. I will not use dark things to fight dark things." Mama Neka's face was unreadable. "Even if it means you suffer longer?" "Even then." For a long moment, Mama Neka said nothing. Then she smiled, a deep, genuine smile. "Good," she said, closing the pouch. "I had to know if you meant what you swore. Many men speak truth but break it when tested." She stood, brushing dust from her wrapper. "Now," she said, "the real battle begins." Kelechi could not return to the storehouse, but he did not sit idle. He began offering a new service to the market women, keeping their records straight, helping them track what they bought and sold. The work was small, the pay was tiny. But it was honest. Slowly, the market women began to trust him. They saw that he did not cheat, did not demand extra coins, did not twist numbers to favor himself. "This one has clean hands," one woman said to another. "He does not lie." Word spread. More people came to Kelechi. He worked carefully, patiently, rebuilding his name one small task at a time. His wife smiled again. His son began to eat better. One afternoon, as Kelechi sat in the market, a royal messenger approached. The man wore the king's colors, his face serious. "Are you Kelechi?" the messenger asked. Kelechi's stomach tightened. "Yes. The king has heard of a man in this market who cannot be bought. A man whose records are always true. The king wishes to know, are you that man?" Kelechi's heart pounded. "I am." The messenger studied him. "We will return." Meanwhile, inside the king's storehouse, things were changing, but not for the better. Under Bamadiel's management, the records looked perfect. The numbers were neat. The reports were glowing. But the workers knew the truth. Goods were disappearing. Tributes that should have been stored were vanishing. When workers questioned it, Bamadiel smiled and reminded them of gifts they owed. "Bring a chicken," he would say. "Show your gratitude. Then perhaps your concerns will be heard." The workers obeyed, afraid. They brought chickens, brought coins, brought jars of palm wine. Bamadiel grew fat on their fear. But late at night, when the storehouse was empty, strange things began to happen. One guard swore he heard pages turning in the deep room. Another claimed he saw light under the door, though no lamp was lit. Then, one midnight, a guard was walking past the deep room when he heard a sound that made his blood freeze. The sound of a book opening. The sound of pages flipping, one by one. He peered through a crack in the door. The ledger of truth sat on its shelf, its cover thrown back. The pages were turning by themselves, slowly, deliberately, as if the book were searching for something. The guard ran. Bamadiel heard the rumors. He tried to laugh them off, but fear gnawed at his belly. One night, he took a heavy iron chain and went to the deep room. He wrapped the chain around the ledger of truth, locking it tight. He placed a stone on top of it. "You are only paper," he muttered. "You cannot move." He left, slamming the door behind him. But that very night, as he lay in his bed, he heard it again. Scratch. 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 The sound of pages turning. Bamadiel sat up, his skin slick with sweat. He ran to the deep room, his hands trembling as he unlocked the door. The chain lay on the floor, unbroken but coiled like a sleeping snake. The stone had rolled aside. The ledger sat open, its pages glowing faintly in the darkness. Bamadiel stepped closer, his breath shallow. On the open page, he saw his own name written in ink that seemed to pulse. Then, as he watched, the ink faded. His name disappeared, letter by letter, until the page was blank. Bamadiel stumbled backward, his heart hammering. "What are you?" he whispered. The ledger's pages fluttered. No wind. No hand. Just movement. Bamadiel fled. The king fell ill. It was sudden, violent. His body burned with fever, his mind wandered. The royal healers tried everything, herbs, prayers, sacrifices. Nothing worked. Finally, the priests were summoned. They studied the signs and delivered their verdict. "The kingdom is out of balance," the head priest said. "There is corruption in a sacred place. The spirits are angry. To heal the king, we must make a pure offering. Every account, every storehouse, must be inspected. All records must be perfect." The elders' faces went pale. They knew what this meant. The head steward summoned Bamadil. "Prepare the records. Everything must be flawless. The king's life depends on it." Bamadil nodded, but inside, panic clawed at him. His records were lies. If the priests looked closely, if they compared the books to the actual goods, everything would unravel. That night, Bamadil made a decision. "If the truth appears," he whispered to himself, his eyes hard, "I will kill it." He would destroy the ledger. He would burn every record. He would silence anyone who questioned him. Whatever it took. Bamadil waited until the storehouse was empty. He gathered dry grass, palm oil, and kindling. He carried it all to the deep room, his hands shaking. The ledger sat on its shelf, silent and still. Bamadil piled the kindling around it. He poured the oil. He struck the flint. The fire caught quickly, flames leaping high and bright. Smoke filled the room. But then something impossible happened. The flames bent. They curved away from the ledger, as if pushed by an invisible hand. They licked the walls, the floor, the ceiling, but they would not touch the book. Bamadil stared, his mouth open. "Burn," he screamed. "Burn." The fire roared higher, but still the ledger sat untouched. The flames moved around it like frightened birds. Then, with a sound like thunder, the ledger snapped open. The pages glowed, bright as the sun. Bamadil shielded his eyes. On the open pages, images appeared, coins counted, names written, dates recorded. Faces of elders who had taken bribes. Faces of workers who had lied. And in the center of it all, Bamadil's face, clear as daylight. Bamadil screamed and ran from the room. Behind him, the fire died instantly, leaving only smoke. The festival of the Golden Drum was the most important celebration of the year. The entire kingdom gathered in the courtyard to honor the king and witness his judgments. Despite his illness, the king insisted on attending. He sat on his throne, pale but determined. "Today," the king announced, his voice weak but steady, "we will honor the most faithful worker in the storehouse. We will lift up the one who serves with a pure heart." The crowd murmured with excitement. Bamadil stood near the front, dressed in his finest robes. He had convinced himself that the ledger's strangeness was only fear playing tricks on him. Today, he would be honored. Today, his name would be sung. But then something happened that silenced the entire courtyard. The doors of the storehouse opened. No one stood near them. No hand pushed them. And from inside, the ledger of truth floated out. It drifted through the air, its pages closed, moving as if carried by invisible hands. The crowd gasped, some stepping back in fear. The ledger came to rest before the king's throne. The king stared at it, his eyes wide. "What is this?" No one answered. A wind rose from nowhere, sweeping through the courtyard. It touched the ledger, and the book opened. The pages began to turn, one by one. And on each page, words appeared, not written by hand, but forming themselves, glowing faintly. The head steward leaned close, reading aloud. "Elder Namdi received 12 goats and 20 baskets of yams from Bamadil." Elder Namdi's face turned red. He tried to speak, but no words came. The page turned. "Elder Okafor received gold coins and fine cloth, in exchange for silence." Elder Okafor stood, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Sweat poured down his face. The pages kept turning. Name after name. Bribe after bribe. The entire web of corruption laid bare for all to see. The crowd was silent, their eyes wide with shock. Then the ledger stopped on a new page. The head steward's voice trembled as he read, Kelechi was accused falsely. The seals were placed in his home by another. The theft was a lie. The crowd gasped. All eyes turned to Kelechi, who stood at the edge of the courtyard, his face pale. The ledger turned again. And there, on the next page, was the face of the true thief. Bamadiel's face stared out from the page, drawn in ink that seemed alive. Beside it were dates, locations, amounts. Every lie he had told. Every coin he had stolen. Bamadiel's blood turned to ice. He stepped forward, his voice loud and desperate. "This is witchcraft," he shouted. "Lies. Someone has cursed this book to frame me." He pointed at Kelechi, his hand shaking. "He did this. He was always jealous of me. He used dark magic to turn you all against me." The crowd murmured, uncertain. But the ledger was not finished. The pages turned once more, and a new image appeared. It showed Bamadiel walking through the forest at night. It showed him standing before the shrine. It showed the priest with the sharp teeth. And it showed Bamadiel speaking a name, Kelechi. The crowd gasped. Even the elders stepped back, their faces filled with horror. The king's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Is this true, Bamadiel? Did you go to a dark shrine? Did you speak against a fellow worker using forbidden spirits?" Bamadiel opened his mouth to deny it. But no words came. His voice failed him, stolen by the very curse he had purchased. The crowd began to shift, whispering nervously. Then, from among them, a figure stepped forward. It was the shrine priest. He moved like a shadow made solid, his eyes gleaming with that same unnatural light. The crowd parted before him, afraid to stand in his way. The priest stopped in front of Bamadiel, his smile cold and terrible. "You made a bargain," the priest said softly. "You gave me a name. You promised me payment. But you never finished paying the price." Bamadiel tried to back away, but his legs would not move. He opened his mouth to scream, but still no sound came. The priest leaned close, his voice a whisper only Bamadiel could hear. "The debt must be paid. Your voice is mine now. Your name will fade, just as you tried to make his fade. And in the end, you will have nothing." The priest touched Bamadiel's chest, lightly, like a father touches a child. Bamadiel's knees buckled. He fell to the ground, gasping, his hands clutching at his throat. The priest turned and walked back into the crowd, dissolving into the shadows as if he had never been real at all. The king rose from his throne, his face grave. Though he was weak, his voice carried the weight of judgment. "Bring Kelechi forward," the king commanded. Kelechi walked through the crowd, his heart pounding. He knelt before the king. The king looked down at him, his eyes sad but clear. "You were accused. You were shamed. You lost everything. And yet you did not bribe. You did not beg. You did not curse. Why?" Kelechi's voice was steady. "Because, my king, I believed that the truth would come. Even if it took years. Even if I starved. I believed." The king nodded slowly. "The ledger has shown me what my eyes could not see. You are innocent. More than that, you are incorruptible." He turned to the elders. "Strip Bamadiel of his position, his wealth, and his honor. Let his name be remembered as a warning." The guards moved forward, dragging Bamadiel away. He tried to speak, to beg, but no words would come. His voice was still gone. The king looked back at Kelechi. "I need a man I can trust to restore truth to the storehouse. Will you serve?" Kelechi bowed his head. But then he looked up. "I will, my king. But first, I ask one thing, Clear the names of all those who were crushed by lies. Restore what was stolen from them. The king smiled. It will be done. The drums sounded again, but this time they sang a different song. Kelechi was lifted up, not because he begged, not because he paid, but because he endured. Bamadiel was stripped of everything. The elders who had taken bribes were forced to return what they had stolen. The workers who had lied were marked with shame. The storehouse was cleaned, record by record, lie by lie. Kelechi worked slowly, carefully, ensuring that every name was honored, every account was true. His wife wept with joy. His son ran through the streets, shouting, "My father is restored." But Kelechi did not boast. He did not celebrate with pride. He simply returned to his work, his hands clean, his heart light. And the ledger of truth? It was returned to the deep room, placed on its shelf with great care. The king ordered it to be guarded always, a reminder to all who served that lies might hide for a season, but truth endures forever. As the ledger was closed, something strange happened. New words appeared on its cover, glowing softly before fading into the leather. A clean hand may be delayed, but it is never denied. Kelechi saw those words and smiled. What lesson do you take from this story? Would you stay clean, even if it costs you everything?